Okay, I got interrupted when I was talking about the voluntary association. Uh, the Civil Rights Act of '64 said that mostly good things, but the notion of telling people they can't be racist in their business is not right. It's their business. It's their business. They own it. Uh, it'd be as if you told people they can't be racist in their own house. You'd have to have people over for dinner who were of a race you hated. That's how crazy that aspect of the Civil Rights Act. It's a totally voluntary society in a free society, meaning you can associate with who you want. And by the way, the nature of competition is such that you would racism would be destroyed by a competitive society. If Because if you were racist, you decided to be anti, and you decided to pick somebody to uh, exclude from your business as an employee or a customer, then that means that you would be excluding the superior source of fulfillment for yourself as a customer or as an employee. Uh, in other words, if as a customer you would be losing that revenue, and as an employee, if you excluded somebody because of their race, you would be by definition getting a worse person, right? Because by definition, uh, you would not be considering the value of the person as an asset to your company, and therefore the person who did consider that would beat you out in the business world. This is the net result of a competitive society, of a voluntary association. And then finally, well, let's just go over here to this one. As far as incentives goes, a free society has no incentive to war. Only government has an incentive to war because only government can defer the costs. They can get somebody else's kids to die in the war, or they can get somebody else to pay for it. And of course, they use the fiat currency of central banks to do so. That's how World War I and World War II were paid for. If it wasn't for the Federal Reserve, we wouldn't have had those wars. We would have had a peaceful 20th century. You have to have government to have massive war. You have to have government to have mass murder. You can have 15 or so by one individual. Because because there's no incentive to kill people or to rob people. It only works in the short run, and everybody else in society will be all over your case. But with government, and people legitimize government. For instance, George Bush, the first thing he did at the beginning of the Iraq War was he knew about a restaurant where Saddam Hussein frequented. So he blew the damn thing up. Saddam Hussein wasn't there, but he killed everybody in the restaurant. Oh, then nobody said anything about it. After all, he's a commander in chief, right? So that's the perverse attitude of believing in government, and it's also the perverse incentive of government to go to war because you're. I'm sure most people believe in it, but they're also incentivized on a massive way to partake in it. Like Morris. What was his name? I think his name was Robert Morris, who was the one that sold all the military goods to the Continental Congress, and for that war, he was. And then after the war, before the government started, he knew that the government was going to take up all the bonds at 100% value. So he ran around and bought them at their current market value of about 20%, or him and his cronies. So that's the incentives of war. to sell for a few people to make a huge profit on false patriotism. And where on the other hand, when I discuss guys like Brown, Dale Brown up in Detroit, he shows that the incentive of business is for peace. The incentive of business is for peace. For people to say that business is violent is just it's schizophrenic, because business is not, by definition, is voluntary. It's only through government that business can hurt people, because otherwise nobody will. They have to adjust themselves to the free choice of the people to patronize them. I mean, the idea that liberals have, and a lot of conservatives too, that you can that business is not a voluntary situation which anyone can quit. It's absurd. I've always been an independent person, and other people are more dependent on their security. But the truth is, you have tons of competition in a free society, and with government, you have none. Right? In a totalitarian society like North Korea, you have nothing. You're just a slave, and you have to bow before the master all the time. Doesn't matter if it's an individual or the soldiers of the totalitarian state. And it's just absurd that do you think business is anything other than voluntary association? So the next one is the rule of law, and of course we know that there is no law as far as government is concerned. If you're in a dispute with the government, just ask Peter Schiff's father, Irwin Schiff. There is no law that says you have to pay income tax. There's certain conditions, I guess, under which you do if you're a government contractor. Or, I don't know what the conditions were, but the whole thing is fraudulent. And when he was brought to trial, he was not allowed to show evidence. Courts are not lawful when they are challenging. They are just lawful when it doesn't bother them to be lawful, when it doesn't bother the powers to be lawful. And as I said in my original introduction, or my first point, is that authority is based on objective knowledge. It doesn't make any sense to speak of authority as objective knowledge, as anything other than having knowledge, right? But objective knowledge is based on subjectivity. So it's up to you to decide who's got an authority. You know, is so-and-so an authority in this science or that craft or that skill, you know, or you know, that art. So it's up to you to decide. And there's nobody can force you to decide who an authority is. That's because authority is because it's based on objective knowledge, on real knowledge, authority. But real knowledge is based on your subjectivity, as I'd established in video 2, or video part 1. And it's the same with income. When you gain income or fulfillment in life, it's really not valuable unless you did it on your own through voluntary association. And that's what the value of society is association. It's not, association is critical for life, but the fundamental is your own perception of the objective value of the other person. And so fulfillment comes through that that subjectivity and the association with other people is fulfilling only if you've voluntarily decided how to deal with other people, how to live with other people. And obviously, we need other people to make life full. And then, of course, there's no guarantees against losses based on um, not being responsible for your own losses, as was the case with the banks. You know, they were too big to fail, they claimed, or Chrysler or GM. Chrysler was bailed out. It's been bailed out twice now. There's no guarantees against losses in a free society, so that makes you careful. And it doesn't take away the ability to take risk, because in a free society, people are richer and they have a proportion of their savings that they can use to try things out that are a little more risky. And when they succeed, that means everyone is pleased with what you've produced. That's why you succeeded.